Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who's recording this episode from underneath some floorboards. It's John Levingood.
Oh man, with my dimensions, not that all the listeners know this, but with my dimensions, I would not do well under floorboards.
Well, it's a good thing that you're partially melted.
I mean, yeah, but if you melt me, there's a lot more melty goop than you would get when you melt Frank.
Have you ever dropped a gallon of water and you're like, where? This is a lot. This is a huge spill. Or no, John, have you ever dropped just a glass of water and just, it feels like it goes everywhere?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now imagine you goo. That'd be a lot.
I mean, there's a lot of me. So there's like, I'm not going to say twice as much, but there is way more me than there is Frank.
I would need to replace my floorboards, probably bleed. Oh man. John, you're never coming to my house and looking at a puzzle box, okay?
Right. I mean, Frank's like $170. I literally have 100 pounds on him after I've had the flu.
What about when he's soaking wet?
Pounds. Right. This is it. I'm still.
Well, I mean, he's out there.
So I'm under some floorboards and I'm goop.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, the Cenobites, they put your mouth and face back in order so you can still talk, and they actually set up the entire setup for you, and I'm currently looking at Chatterer just chattering at me, and he's surprisingly insightful, John. He's a big fan of Ozu. He's a big fan of early Kurosawa before he sold out, he says, which we'll have to argue about that. But Chatterer is a cinephile. He's a Cenobite cinephile.
Believe you, I would have sooner gone with Butterball because he's kind of like the comic book guy build of the Cenobites.
He would just lecture you about X-Men, back like 1990s X-Men, and why now they're just a mess.
Yeah, Wolverine did not have the yellow suit until circa 1993.
I think I bought comics from him back in the 90s, actually. He's just licking his lips the whole time, John.
From the Mountain Dew and the Mountain Dew Code Red and the cheese puffs.
Oh, yeah. I gotta tell you, John, you've covered this entire franchise on Movies, Films, and Flicks. You've written a review for all of them. I've only watched the first one. And I don't know why.
Ever. No, I want to come back to that, but you've only seen the first one ever. Like, that's the only Hellraiser movie you've seen.
No, I saw 2022, but that's not.
Okay.
Like, that's just a reboot, remake, which was good. I mean, I like David Bruckner. And that one leads more into, like, drug addiction, more outright, less subtle kind of. Well, this one had a lot of addiction, but this one was like drug addiction. So those are the two I've watched, but I've never watched the one where we learn about who Pinhead is, or who the lead Cenobite or lead Hell Priest is. Like, I've had to do articles on them where I have to like research the series, but I've never gone through them all and watched. Like, I know there's a Juggernaut or a Xenomorph or a Leviathan. I know that Kristen goes to hell. Frank's like, hey girl, and then she goes and sees him because she thinks it's her dad.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much it. I don't know about the later ones. I know there's like a club massacre, but I don't know which one that one's in.
I'm going to give you the super quick elevator pitch for why anyone who has only seen Hellraiser 1 should watch Hellraiser 2. Because Hellraiser 1 is the idea, and it's very romanticized and deep and dark, right? But it's more about this chamber thriller feature of this idea. Whereas part 2, I shit you not, it's like Nightbreed. In terms of like the world and the rules and the layers to it, it's like Nightbreed. Okay. Like this huge scale thing. Whereas this is this very crackable, understandable, not that it's not deep and layered, right? But it's like these two movies are a world apart in scope. And like in the way that Nightbreed is just so bonkers and has so many different kinds of creatures and meanings and purposes, so does Hellraiser 2. Hellraiser 2 is just nuts.
All right,
it's a peyote fever dream.
Okay, so if I watch it, will we do an episode about it?
Dude, please count me in on that, because you know what? So this movie is really good, right? We're going to get into this, but Hellraiser is very rich and pithy and it's loaded with allegory. I mean, it's not. I'm not going to call it super deep, but the way that it explores it
For a
right?
horror film, it is, right? For
Sure,
an 87 horror film.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, part 2 is just a roller coaster. I don't know how to. I so look forward to hearing your first time viewing reaction, because I saw that when I was like, I don't know, 9 or something, and you're so young you don't even know what's going on, and then as you get older and you understand more, you never realize how dumbfounding it would be to see it for the first time as an adult. So like, I don't know, Hellraiser 2 is just so nuts. And at the end of the day, you could just say there's Hellraiser, Hellraiser 2, Hellraiser 4, and the newest remake. I need to specify that. The newest remake, 2022. And those 4 Hellraiser movies are really the only 4 Hellraiser movies anyone needs. Not that I didn't enjoy the full exploration.
You know what's kind of crazy? I watched this movie so long ago that I thought Frank was in the basement. Like, I thought Frank was in the cellar.
So it's funny that you say that, because even though I've seen this movie a dozen times, in my head he's in the attic, when really he's in one of 3 rooms on the floor.
Like, if I was chatting with somebody, right? We're on a bus, you and I, and it's a speed situation, and you and I are kind of bored because Sandra Bullock is just driving and crushing it, and Keanu's out there working, and we're like, well, I might as well talk about movies while we're, on the brink of blowing up. I'd be like, yeah, man, that scene in the basement. And then he'd be like, no, man, that's a scene in the attic. And then someone would have come up to us like, no, I was in the kitchen. And then eventually, probably Keanu was like, actually, it's in the bedroom. You just shut up, Keanu. But yeah, I don't think.
It's really just like the 3rd floor, and there's 3 rooms on that floor.
Yeah.
Well,
great wooden floors, by the way, John.
Attic.
Nothing creaks in that house. Nothing creaks in there.
Yeah, a lot of horror movies.
Hardwood.
Horror movies have creakier real estate in general. It's like if you're watching a horror movie or a kid-themed movie where the kids are trying to sneak out of the house.
At the last minute.
Right.
Oh, no.
The more important it is that you are not heard, the creakier the house is in a movie. Period. The end.
But you know what's crazy about this movie, too, is when I was younger, I sort of watched it with, I'm not going to say it, but like maybe my lizard brain, where I just kind of took it as this really nasty, bloody little thing. And I didn't really get any of the themes of passion and perversity and addiction that Clive Barker likes to talk about when he references this movie. I also forgot how juicy it was. So now I know I love this movie, John. This is a gooey, juicy movie. And Clive Barker
lot of drippiness.
Barker said that they used gallons of it. So I was like, John loves this. No wonder he loves it. But I was
like, you just see Frank sitting there in his partially recomposed body, and there's like a 3-inch drip from his jaw just sitting there.
Like, this is a movie about like an extremely gooey skeleton becoming less gooey by taking men and making them into piles of goo. And its final form is basically a juicier version of Red Skull from Captain America: The First Avenger. Which is quite interesting. And also, so going through this movie, right, when I listened to the commentary, when I read the interviews, Clive Barker, first-time director, he wasn't really happy with his adaptations of Underworld and Rawhead Rex that he wrote the screenplays for, or he wrote the novella and adapted the screenplay. So he decided to take the 1986 novella, The Hellborn Heart. He decided to just write the screenplay and direct it. He had a $1 million budget, but you know what's interesting is he's like, he would say like, we got to do something a little more creative for this movie. And he would talk about how Fellini and Tarkovsky and their like imagery first style influenced him. And then he also talked about how he loves Dario Argento, David Cronenberg, and Alfred Hitchcock. Like in Scanners, the head blows up relatively early. And then in this movie, we see Pinhead at 4 minutes and 44 seconds. So he was like, he did 2 things really well with this. He went with a lot of very, very memorable imagery. He went heavy on the gore quickly. And then he sort of there's a narrative there, but it doesn't go where you think it would go. Like sitting down in 1987 and watching this, I don't think you could get I don't think you could pin this movie down for what you think it is. And also too, like when he was talking about this movie, he said he wanted to make an unapologetic horror film. He talked about passion and perversity. He talked about religion. He wanted to make a different teenage heroine, about forbidden love, sexual obsession. And he just talked about how, like, ageless experts of refined pleasure and pain, and it's a domestic triangle. Like, he used all these words, like level of mystery, pleasure and pain, mystical power of blood. Like, this is a movie that he thought really deeply about. And I think he offers enough there. I mean, so the actor Clare Higgins, right, who plays Julia, she's a 6-time Olivier Award nominee for her stage work, and she's been nominated for a Tony. She's incredibly well renowned. And Larry Robinson was the villain in the Dirty Harry movie. So he got this, like, really good cast. He cast, first-time actress Ashely Laurence, but he made a very elegant but very gooey horror film that could appease people looking for something more, and then he could appease people who are looking for violence. And it was a very shrewd move by a first-time director.
Yeah, it's like you said, if you just come in with your lizard brain, you'll be totally pleased. If you came in with your lizard brain and watched It Follows, I think you'd be asking yourself, well, why the hell is that happening?
Yeah.
Like, you just can't get away with that. This manages to please on a lot of levels, regardless of the awareness, I guess, of the viewer.
Yeah, and it's like Verhoeven with Starship Troopers, where it's like, oh, the fascism, you have that funny take on fascism, but then you also get bugs and guts and blood and gore. And so Verhoeven works like that too. And so watching this again, and okay, so John, I'm just dropping this on you, but I've been thinking about, like, obsession and lust in horror movies. And, like, we don't have to get too deep into lust and obsession, but when you think about The Phantom of the Opera from 1925, Dracula 1931, Onibaba from 1964, Daughters of Darkness 1971, Ganja and Hess 1973, The Fly 1986, there's a lot of themes of, like, obsession and sex and jealousy, and I feel like that's always been intertwined in the horror genre. I mean, Nosferatu, and I mean, that's still Dracula, but then you have Bride of Frankenstein to make him a bride, and she rejects it. Like, I feel like lust and desire has really good, like, It Follows has been sort of a major theme of horror for a long time, but I think Hellraiser deals with it probably the best. Well, not the best, that's a really bold statement, but in a really unique way. And I appreciate that for it. Like, it plays kind of like a Thirst, or it plays like I'm just going to say Thirst, but just the consequences of obsession and turning people. And it's just an interesting movie, John. It's a lizard brain movie, but it's also a smart film. So
I mean, it's also it's very satisfying for the very highbrow viewer, though, because there's all these layers that are in front of you. You don't need to be aware of to enjoy the movie, but if you are aware of them, dude, they are there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's funny too. We watched the character Julia go from someone who's not necessarily looking to not be in her marriage, but someone who clearly is unsatisfied. It doesn't mean she wants out, right? But she's not really happy. She's not satisfied. There are things that are missing. And as she reconnects with Gooey Frank and starts embracing, first reluctantly, but then eventually embracing the true villainy that is required to reconstitute his body and bring him back, she starts to dress. Now, she was always stylish in the movie, but she starts to dress even more stylishly. Her hair gets higher and bolder, and her hair sprayed done. Her eye makeup gets more elaborate and matches her, like, orangish gold top. She goes from reluctance to exhilaration as she's luring these men in, and it has nothing to do with the thrill of luring the men. It's the thrill of the end product for which she's luring the men. And even when Frank touches her with his gooey fingers, which again at first terrifies her, but she still is so enthralled with the concept of Frank that she goes through with all this. And then later when he touches her with his slightly less gooey fingers, she is less reluctant and less appalled or more invited by it, even though it's so inhuman. But still, we're talking about lust, but at the same time, there's passion there, or obsession, or fixation, not just lust, because that is a skinless, arguably penisless Frank at the time, right?
Yeah, he's just sitting there smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because during the commentary, the script supervisor and Watts, Barker was talking about how she's a really buttoned up woman. She didn't talk much very proper. But she said the title of the film should be called I'm not going to say the full thing, but what a woman will do for a good blank, or like what a woman will do for some good sex. That's what the script supervisor, good shag. That's what the script supervisor said that this movie should be. And I think you're right though. It's not just lust, right? There's a lot more to it than that. But but the way she plays it though, and just the shots of her close-ups in the bathroom when she has the blood on her face, and just the amazing special effects by Bob Keane and his Image Studios team. Like this, it's a movie where, man, it's so nasty, but it's, they put most of the budget towards the special effects. So remember when they're out eating dinner, how bad that scene looks? He's like, I had 2 hours to shoot that. So I guess everything that they had outside of the home was rushed. But I think that's smart though, because like Frank looks great. Like when he comes back to life, he looks great. The goo looks great. The Cenobites look great. The architect, not so much. The monster that you can see people pushing him, like if you pause it, you can see people behind him pushing the giant little pincher monster. But it looks good. And also, John, like we've never seen this before. Here's this woman who is, like, you're right, this gooey man touches her and she's like, yes, this is great, and what it will bring. And so, like, that's why I think, Stephen King read the short story and said, I've seen the face of horror, and it's Clive Barker. But it's just nice when you watch as many horror films that we do, when like, someone can sort of, not like make a 4-quadrant horror film, because I mean, Roger Ebert hated it, but I think he went in hating it. But when he can make something that's a mix between A Nightmare on Elm Street and It Follows, and then combine them to make something accessible for more. And that's quite rare. And it's still kind of an art house film, but it's also a mainstream horror film that spawned many films, which I dig. I don't know. I know I'm heaping praise on this movie, but I think everything about it and how it came together was just smart. So he said that the people who worked on it in England, like he said that normally the English board wouldn't even make this movie. Like he said that like it was rare that this would be approved, but I guess he said that the way it was, like the way it was shot and the themes of the movie, they watched it and they're like, okay, so this isn't like garbage. This is something with kind of something to say, and it got away with a lot more in the British film industry. He said it's pretty rare that an intense horror movie gets made, and because of that, like he got Robert Vigin, the guy who like pulled focus on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Rollerball. He was the cinematographer on Event Horizon. Like the Bob Keane, like the guy who had done some incredible work for Aliens, So he got this incredible crew because everyone's like, oh, we can make a horror movie and we can make a gnarly one. So they all work for cheap to help him achieve his vision. And I think it works. I think he achieved his vision. I don't know what you think, but yeah, I mean, we're talking about it, but I think it's pretty cool.
Well, I don't truly obviously know what his vision was. I just know that I think this is an incredibly impressive movie that holds up very well.
Mm-hmm. Well, so his goal was to, like, what he said he wanted to do is, like, we got to do something a little more creative. And he wanted to make a movie that he describes as no teenagers were harmed during the making of this movie. And then he wanted to hit the audiences hard from the beginning. He wanted to tame them. So in the first 4 minutes, you get the explosion, you get the Cenobites, you get the face being put together. Then you get the Hitchcockian, the Hitchcockian dread, because you know that he's up there. And then when he goes after her the first time, you're like, oh crap, there's going to be a death. And then that doesn't work like that. So you have this movie where there's this, people know, people don't know. What are they working at? What are they doing? How is he coming back? Like, will those Cenobites come back? Who are they doing? So it's, I don't know. I think his goal, everything that he kind of talked about, what he wanted, I think he achieved. And I mean, I guess there are some clunky moments. Like I know people kind of hate on Lawrence's performance, but I dig it. Like I like Christy. She's kind of a beast. Like when she meets Frank, she throws the cube out the window, then grabs it. She like fist fights Cenobites. She like tricks them. She works her way out of death. She solves puzzles while being chased by monsters. I dig her, man. Like I like her a lot. I mean, what do you think Kirsty stands in the pantheon of, like, I hate saying it, final girls, but like where does she stand, like the final heroes for you?
Yeah, that's a tough call. Like I want to rank her high because of her agency in the movie, right? In the story. It's like she's a final girl, but she's not. She's in a lot of situations that are analogous with final girls, but she always has a lot more control.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call Ellen Ripley a final girl, right?
Oh, so is your final girl like a Nancy Thompson or Chris from Friday the 13th Part 4?
Or Laurie, right?
Laurie,
or
yeah.
Laurie Strode, right? I feel like those are our final girls. Our final girls are the girls who happen to be the survivor, who learns enough as they happen to have survived. They learn enough to, and again, Nancy is a little closer to Kirsty on this, but still, they get more agency, I feel like, as the movie moves along. I feel like Kirsty starts out with a lot more and has less of a journey. She knows what's going on. Well, to some extent, she's aware of what's going on a lot more. She's less the victim, to me, I guess.
That's a good point.
I mean, if we're just talking about final girls, I'm not going to say, oh, she's not a final girl. She's just less final girly among final girls for me.
So if you would do it, you would do stuff like, so you know how the horror genre has subgenres. Like there's a subgenre of final girls. So like, cause Arnold Schwarzenegger from from Predator is a final girl. If we go in that route.
No, that's just it. I kind of say that he just happens to survive and learns with each surviving event. Right.
Yeah. And so like, I kind of like the idea of subgenres within, like, the final girl thing. I don't know, but like final heroes, but no, I guess that makes sense. But I like her because the first thing she does is take the box and throw it out the window. And then she picks it up. And then she's in the hospital and she opens up the cube, but she escapes it. And then she talks the Cenobites out of taking her. And then at the end, her boyfriend gets punched in the face and knocked out. And she's growling at this creature, grabbing for the box while solving it. Like, yeah, she's kind of a beast. I dig it. And then the puzzle master comes up and takes it and burns away. And she's like, what just happened? So I don't know, she's very refreshing for me, at least, because when she first moves in, it's like, oh no, I got my own place. It's cool. Then she meets a dude and she's like, oh yeah, hey, let's go hang out. Like, it's a very odd, like, and so he actually said that, Clive Barker said that he wanted to make a movie where, what did he say? He didn't want to make the women passive entities. And I think he succeeded in not making any of them passive entities.
Well, none of our victims, our male fop victims are, I guess, the sex role reversal.
Yeah.
Of exactly who we would expect to be our victims. But of our main cast, none of them are main cast though, right? Mm-hmm. Of our main cast, we don't have, people who are doing the things that should earn them a death in a horror movie. And as a result, very few of them earn that death. When Julia dies, it's an accident.
Yeah. When
Larry dies, it's a major plot turn, right? It's not just a death. That's like the great coup that was always going to happen that they never actively discussed. And yeah, I don't know. It's so not the cast of players you would not even typically, just generally have in a horror movie, right?
Yeah, because when would a horror movie switch over to the lead character being Julie, a kind of unsatisfied stepmom, and then as she takes men back and feeds them to Frank, Larry is a total backseater. In the beginning, he has a decent role, but then he takes a back seat, and then he's stabbed, and then he becomes Frank. Then he gets more of a role. But yeah, and then you get the emergence of Kristen. Like, is it why in IMDb is it Kirsty? I have several notes,
Kirsty.
John. Is it Kirsty?
Yeah, it's Kirsty.
Oh gosh, I have Kristen written down. Okay, I'm not going crazy. So yeah, on IMDb,
I know
Kirsty,
way more Kristens than I know Kirsties, though. I think that's why.
Oh, you know
it's just
why?
more
Kristen's from Nose 3. So then, yeah, right? Kristen, played by...
Yeah, Kristen Wilcox.
I mixed them up because I've been watching those movies back. I've been in 1987 Horrorland. But okay, yeah, so, like, Kirsty just sort of then she becomes like, at first you think she's going to be the fodder, but then she's not. So yeah, I mean, but it still gives you what you want, though. It still gives you the blood and guts. It still gives you the special effects. But then it takes you to places you don't really know. So then once again, it works for all the crowds. Which, once again, good job, Clive Barker. It's good stuff. I like it.
This movie's solid gold, man.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm almost glad he didn't get $5 million, because maybe he wouldn't have been as clever. Maybe he wouldn't have been as, well, I don't know if patient's the word, but tactful. Whatever desperation that comes with that lower budget that we've discussed time and time again, that just, fosters inspiration. Like, This is such a cool movie.
Yeah.
There are a couple things in this movie, by the way, that I suspect had major influences on some things that I don't think people would readily think of. So when we see the first victim of Julia and Frank, his mouth is huge, crooked, black-jawed, ghost-faced, and I immediately thought of The Ring, the first victim in the closet.
Yeah.
And that's something that became like, a visual effects gag trope. That black-jawed, we saw it in Dead Silence. We saw it in lots of movies when people died some horrific way. They'd have this weird, over cartoonish, slack jaw, crooked mouth, maybe with some crazy eyes. I don't know this, but I feel like this might have been the first movie to do something like that without even making spectacle of it. And the other thing is the chains mark. You know what I think of when I think of the chains? I think of Spawn.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And Spawn is not so unlike a Cenobite when you take the analogous factors that make that Todd McFarlane comic character. He goes to hell, strikes a deal, gets to come back and punish people, whatever. It's obviously not the same, but I don't know. I feel like Spawn is a very Cenobite inspired, more Pinhead inspired character.
And like Guillermo del Toro is wildly influenced by Clive Barker in his works, in his literature. I mean, I think Guillermo del Toro has made some very elegant horror films, and Clive Barker said he wanted this movie to be elegant. Remember Nightbreed? How the monsters are the heroes?
Epic.
Yeah, and that's very Guillermo del Toro. Like, I mean, he had that idea lodged in his brain long before Nightbreed came out. But yeah, he's a guy who loves monsters. And I think so does Clive Barker. You know what's interesting about these monsters, though, is quote unquote monsters. I mean, they're whatever, hell priests, but they make sense. They make logical sense in a narrative, because when you're Frank Cotton and you've been around the world and you have done all the drugs, you seeked everything to seek, you've had affairs with your brother's wife, you've lived, you've done every drug, you've seen everything, you've gotten there. Like, I feel like once you get to that point, I'm speaking for this, but like when it comes to addiction and satisfaction, like you're gonna, like once you get to this point, if someone's like, hey man, I got this box and it'll introduce you to these people, and man, will they give you a time. It's, in many ways, it's like drugs. It's like a lot of different things that you could think about. But yeah, I mean, when the Cenobites come, like, they're not coming after him. They were summoned. You summon them. You find it. You open it up. You take it. They show up. They're like, okay, come with us. It's going to hurt. Or we're just going to blow you up. but they make sense when it comes to sort of where addiction can take you or where the quest for the next thrill will come from. So it's not just a bozo opening up a box. It's not Ash Williams. Well, hey, there's a speaker. I'm going to play it. Even though I love Ash Williams, but it's a logical thing where someone has to open it to call them. So you're sort of, I mean, it's not a great move, but people I think would do it. And that's why I think these monsters work as well.
Yeah, and and despite the circumstances of their summoning, they never. There are sinister aspects to them, but when I really look at the full dossier of their behavior, I wouldn't call them evil, much as I wouldn't necessarily the creatures of Nightbreed. Some of them are meaner, right? Some of them are more cruel, but not necessarily evil. They have a purpose. They have rules. They have goals. They had expectations when they were summoned. And when Frank summoned them, Frank was on board. When Skinless Frank is telling us the story, even he uses the phrase, pain and pleasure indivisible.
Yep. And he smiles at the end when his face is being ripped apart. Mm-hmm. He has that look on his face where there's so listen, like when I say the word villains, I guess that's not correct because they show up. The one thing I don't like, and I want to see what you think about this, is like what Kirsty makes a deal with them. Like, hey, I will give you a soul for my soul. And they make the deal, but then they go after her at the end. Which, I mean, I guess they're hell beings. And I don't like that. And because that's just sort of a fooled you. Like I guess she did still call them, but it's just a shifty move. Like he seems more elegant than that. Don't you think the Cenobites, I don't know, I feel like they'd be good on their word because up until then they just show up when you call them and then they obliterate you, which is what you wanted.
It's interesting you say that because I was kind of wondering that specifically on this viewing, and part of me was wondering if it wasn't just, well, I can't help myself but to have a little fun with her, or to toy with her, or to taste her pain, as opposed to dragging her to this thing that isn't even necessarily hell for an eternity. I don't necessarily know that it was going back on their deal and not just having a little fun.
Because Cenobites just want to have fun?
Yeah, sure. And don't get me wrong, like it's way like on the devil's advocacy of it, but it didn't feel like it felt less like she's getting away and more like oh, there she is. And I don't know.
I don't like it. I'm going to start believing what you said. They just want to have some fun with her. Like they want to be a cat with a mouse before it eats the mouse.
This fun could maim her for life, right? Mm-hmm. Or she could bleed to death from it. But I'm just saying, maybe they weren't necessarily looking to bring her to an eternity of pain and pleasure.
I mean, one thing that's nice is that it raises a question about them then. You're like, oh, did they do that? Why did they do that? It makes them a little bit more, like you want to know more about them, because if he's like, yeah, you got a deal, then he goes, psych, you're kind of like, whoa, like this dude's like super elegant and he seems like I just summon when I'm called, but then I kind of go back on my deal. So they're kind of petulant. Maybe they've been down there for too long. Maybe they're just pure evil and they never would have done it. Maybe you're screwed the second you open that box and they wanted to see where it went. Maybe they wanted to have some fun. They haven't had fun in 7,000 years like this. So yeah, I think it adds a unique wrinkle, but I just don't like the whole, like, it's like Spaceballs, like fooled you.
Here's the other thing too. We call the movie Hellraiser, right? And there's no fault to that, to what I'm saying. And you got to communicate to the world what your movie or your story is appropriately. But when we think of hell and devils and old Gratch and, Lucifer and all these concepts, and we think of dealing with him, we think of contracts, and we think that the devil is good at his word, but he's going to find a way to fool you in the deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
We almost think of making a deal with the devil, and this magical parchment just appears with a quill pen, and he pierces your finger, and you sign something that's 10,000 words long.
It won't give you the time to read it.
Right, but in this case, it's just a chat, and this isn't necessarily hell. This is something that Frank wanted, and even though he eventually wanted to escape, who's to say it wasn't because he wanted the pain and pleasure fantasy and the choice of his life, right? As opposed to just the one. And again, we're calling it Hellraiser. We're thinking of hell. We use terms like demons and angels in the movie, but these guys aren't any of that.
No.
And so, again, we have the expectation of hell and a deal with the devil, perhaps, when this is like a deal with a stranger, and a stranger can come with whatever rules that stranger comes with.
I mean, we're using very stock language, I think, when we are talking about heaven and hell and where this is and who these people are and if they are the villain. I mean, Frank and Julie are very much so the villains of this movie. But I guess we've just been so conditioned. But I guess when I say it, I just put air quotes around it. I maybe should be more specific.
No, but even Pinhead says demons to some, angels to others. They hand you that in the dialogue. Again, communicating to an audience of people watching a movie or reading a book, I understand, right? Or communicating to the people of Earth and what the people of Earth think of. But we are given some language that can condition us to certain programmed expectations from movie and folklore history, right? And even
life. Even life. Like, look at people that are villainized or loved by other factions in this world. Like, I think Clive Barker's working on several levels here when he says that, like, angels to some, demons to others. Like, he's mixing in more, I think, than just a guy with very symmetrical nails in his head. He does love that coordinated look. But yeah, so once again, I think that works on a lot of levels where, like, so I don't look at Pinhead as the villain, but when he does go back on the deal, you're like, well, I guess he's just kind of a shithead too. Like, and you know what? Extra dimensional hell priests can be punks, I guess, and they can chase their prey around. But I guess that's the one wrinkle. And then aside from the look, I would say, but most of the time they're just called. It's like a pager. It's like a perverse pager. No, pain and pleasure pager. There it is, the PPP. What do you think, John? Would you have one of those?
Maybe Pinhead's mindset of the deal was, I'm letting you go now.
Yeah.
In exchange for you bringing him to me.
No, that's a good point. I mean, they didn't really sort it out.
Yeah, of course, when you first see this movie, you don't know anything about these things, and you could be like, gosh, is Pinhead like actually a demon? Is he like thousands of years old? Of course, later we learned that he was a dude from like Vietnam, right? So he hasn't been Pinhead really so super long. He's been Pinhead for like 15 years when he meets Kirsty. He hasn't been doing this for a super long career. But at the time of the movie, we don't know that. He could be some ancient cosmic being. He could be like a Zazel in Fallen. And if that were the case, I would find that he would view a deal with a human as not much more valuable and having no much more gravity than making a deal with a cockroach.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, a very industrious cockroach, like the Wall-E cockroach. Like, I feel like that's the way they look at her. I think they kind of like her, John, when she makes that deal. And
I think they're amused.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, listen, when you live that life, and if you could be a billion-year-old cosmic force of nature and be and this random woman makes you laugh with, like, her quick-witted dealings, that's definitely a bonus, I would say. They definitely got a kick out of her, which makes me happy. I feel like when you've seen everything that they've seen, we've seen such great sights. Yeah, I think they kind of like her, but yeah, she's like the Wall-E cockroach of cockroaches.
But again, when you see part two, the veil on the great and powerful Oz is pulled, and you realize they are not so cosmic at all.
So what are
and
they?
in fact, So again, Pinhead was a general in Vietnam who found the box. So really, aged up, Pinhead is like 85 years old in this movie. Like that's it. And then Chatterbox and Butterball were both teenagers when they died, whenever they died, and they looked stylishly like they died in the 80s. So they didn't seem like they were dead very long. So really, like part two though totally breaks trend and goes into kind of like bonkers land fever dream. It's I'm not saying that it doesn't stay true to the source material, but it swings for the fences on extremes.
Got it.
But once you've seen part two, you realize that these aren't cosmic beings, that they don't have the wisdom of generations, and that really they might have only tortured a few people ever.
Oh God, really?
Yeah. So again, that's the thing. They come off so differently in this first movie, and in the course of the second movie, more towards the end, you learn more about them. And
does that hurt or help him though? I know he has books about. So he has books about. Quote. His name's not even Pinhead. Like Clive Barker thinks that's a very unelegant name. But once again, I'm just going to call him Pinhead. Yeah. But does that help or hurt the character? Because in this one, you get you learn everything you need to know about him. Like they pick you up. You either love him or you hate him. They're going to take you with them, and it's going to be terrible or great. And then they disappear. And then there's a keeper of it who gives it to somebody else. And then that keeper goes and gets it. And then, so why is he following Kirsty then? So like, remember he sees her 3 times in the movie. The keeper of the box. So when, like, there's one time when he's eating the maggots. There's another time when she walks by him. Why does she keep seeing the Keymaster? I'm just going to call him the Keymaster.
Sure.
And hope it's Rick Moranis. Well, why does he keep popping up to her?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially since she first sees him before she's properly interacted with Frank or the box, right? Mm-hmm. It would make more sense to me if she didn't interact with this character until after that. That character almost comes off like a devil-like overseer just watching how things are going down. But again, why would it be paying so much attention to her? But maybe it's really in a whole lot of places at once, but they're showing it to us. They want us to see it. You know, the movie, right? But yeah, I don't really know how to react to that. That's one of those things where I wave my hands and just call it a filmmaking device.
And you know, it's funny. Clive Barker said he added him in there and never explained it just because he wanted that mystery. So that's maybe like the loosest thread he has in this movie, where he just went, I just want some mystery. Like, who is that guy? But sometimes I wonder if those are good questions or bad questions to ask, because I think there are good questions you can ask with movies, but I also think there's questions where you're just going, why? Why? Like, it's fine to know why that guy pops up, and it's fine that there's not a reason. But if the most logical thing is the guy knew exactly what was going to happen, or it knew exactly what was going to happen. But why show himself to her? It's odd. It's the biggest, not like plot thread, or it's, you know, not much is explained either about these, but you feel like you understand them. But this guy is just sort of, I don't know, it's odd. I don't know, maybe he...
Yeah, that character manifests in the second movie as well, by the way.
Oh, really? And so he keeps popping up. And by this point, by this point, the box isn't open. Because...
Right, when she first met him, right.
The box isn't open. But the box is in the house, correct? Because But then, when he disappeared, why wasn't the box taken and given to somebody else?
Right, and why is it that then at the end of the movie, when Frank is taken away, as opposed to when he was taken away right before the movie starts, the box goes back to Southeast Asia to some vendor who now has it again and is selling it to someone else?
Yeah. And how does he cut off his brother's skin so cleanly and put it on himself?
Well, it wasn't really cleanly on that hairline.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, that's a pretty
But
good skinning
everywhere
job.
else.
Yeah.
But everywhere else. And somehow Kirsty never noticed that.
I mean, it's like an A+ skinning job. But it's also more hand waving, though. I mean, there's some cosmic
Maybe
shit
Kirsty
going on.
just thought that her dad just dyed his hair.
Oh, and
like
well, he also said he dealt with Frank too. So maybe she thought, did my dad just kill Frank?
And now he has blood all over his hairline?
Yeah. And she, but yeah, he does wear a skin suit. But you know what? Who cares? Like I think that's not the point of the movie, right? That's more like, oh, hey, he did a great skinning job. But this is a movie where there's hell priests and other weird things coming into play. So maybe skin fits differently on goo people. It just suck. It just.
Well, there's a little supernaturalness going on. I mean, we saw the reconstitution, so this is something with that. A little hand waving.
Oh, he's also absorbing bodies and becoming more human. That doesn't really make sense, but it's magic.
So I'm gonna bring something up that I never ever noticed, and I happened to see it where someone happened to share it in a some social media screen grab with like a text on it. And so I'm watching the movie and I pay attention for it this time. So Frank has brown eyes and Larry has blue eyes. And when Frank puts on Larry's skin, Frank has his blue eyes. I mean, his brown eyes. He doesn't have Larry's blue eyes.
Wait, so in the movie, the character Larry has blue eyes.
Yes.
But Frank has brown eyes.
Yes.
And when Frank is wearing the Larry skin, his eyes aren't blue, they're still brown.
Because Frank's eyes are brown.
Jeez Louise.
Eyes are brown. And so they did that. They put contacts on the actor. And I never noticed that. And of course, the movie makes no effort for her to say, like, when she realizes who he is, it's like, oh my God, your eyes. There's nothing like that. There's never anything about it, but they did it in the movie. It's just a nice little detail.
Well, respect. That's cool.
Right. Nice. I just thought that was so cool. And Frank, I'm sorry, Larry actually has very blue eyes too, not those subtle grayish blue eyes. He had bright blue eyes in this movie. So like once I noticed it, it's like, oh, that is very distinct.
That's a good pull. I mean, he loves his monsters. So yeah, I mean, why? And yeah, that's cool. What are any other things you want to tackle in this movie?
So I was talking about how I think that this movie influenced other movies. I can't help but to wonder if the very beginning of the movie and end of the movie with this, again, this somewhere in Southeast Asia, right? This vendor is selling this box to, in both cases, a white guy, whatever. It feels a lot to me like Raiders of the Lost Ark, or almost if you take the Gremlins shopkeeper and put him in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It made me think of that. I don't know, in a very like happy way. And I don't know that that's actually the influence, but part of me hopes that it is.
Do you want to know why he said it there?
Yeah.
Because his grandfather bought him back a puzzle box from I'm not sure what country he was in, but yeah, he came back from a trip and brought the puzzle box with him. So I'm not sure whereabouts in the gigantic area of Asia, but that's where the puzzle box came from, was a gift that he got when he was younger, Clive Barker.
Oh no, but I mean, just sitting there, it feels like when Indiana Jones meets someone.
Got it.
You know what I mean? And that's what I mean. Like, because I don't think that his dad got him the puzzle box from a very special vendor with whom he set up a meeting at a cafe at a street side. I think he found it in a shop. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it made me think of Indiana Jones so much. And I was hoping that was the influence, like a Raiders of the Lost Ark scene or something. And again, then because it almost, and again, it just smacked the tiniest bit of Gremlins for just for the obscurity too.
No,
I don't know. It was that opening and close though, regardless of if it was influenced by anything, I really like.
It's world
And I
building.
like the cyclical nature of the box that they presented.
Mm-hmm. And this, the set was so tiny, they said they couldn't pan the camera, but it still looks cool. It bookends the movie. It sets up the lore. Like, who is that guy selling it? Who are these people? How do these people learn about it? And that's cool. And so I was looking up other movies that might have been influenced, man. Like, Dark City, I think, has a similar look. In Cabin in the Woods, when
the outfits, yeah.
In like Cabin in the Woods, and during the commentary, Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon explicitly say you have to talk about Pinhead. And so they have the guy with the saws in his head. Like, that's a direct, like...
Oh, I actually believe in the credits that's referred to as, like, Hell Demon.
Yeah. And in the commentary, they bring that up. Someone says Cube has it, but I don't know if Cube has a Hellraiser feel. Someone said Star Trek First Contact has a very Hellraiser look. Someone put
the Borgs.
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead 3. They said that they kind of...
Yeah, because of the way that, why can't I think of her name? Minka, that actress, modifies her body.
Yep, that's exactly what they said, the body modification, and then they said the cell. So like a woman who enters a serial killer's mind, but I guess like they said it has a look and feel of it.
So the cell, I'm not going to say that's wrong, but the cell brought it up in a much more independently organic way, in my opinion, where they were kind of like just addressing the subculture of people who do this suspension thing with these like implants, rings in their back. So I don't know. It's such a hellish nightmare scape that I think it's easy to make for that to be a logical, connection.
And our movie Event Horizon.
That's a duh. I'm going to say Event Horizon. Like I can't play devil's advocate on that and say that they just came up with that. That's beautifully and wonderfully Hellraiser inspired.
And he'll even say that. Paul W. Sanderson will be like, yes, I love that movie, so I did it.
Like, were you going with a Hellraiser thing? It's like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I'm surprised you asked.
He won't even hide it. Like, he'll just be like, yes, I love that movie. We did it. Like, that's what I love about Paul W. Sanderson. He's never afraid to admit his things he admires, and I love that about him.
Good though, because if he said, oh no, I just came up with that, we'd just be sitting here with our arms crossed, like shaking our head like,
bro. And
it's like, he'd be like, yeah, I never even saw the movie. It's like, really?
You know what I will say is I love a good jaunt, like a Drag Me to Hell. I love a very funny horror comedy, a good time. But I will say the horror movies that linger most in my memory are because of the visuals, like Fire in the Sky, or just Thirst. There are visuals in that just really stuck on my memory. And even though I put them in the basement, the goopy body of Frank has always been there. Whenever Hellraiser popped up, it would just go in my head and I'd be like, ew. So I think Clive Barker did a great job in just making it very visual. And he said once again that he was a student of David Argento and Cronenberg. I mean, Cronenberg movies are known for their moments. So when you think about The Fly, you think about moments. So it's cool, man. Like he's a student of the game. He went out and made his own horror film, and it became very influential, and he was very influenced by other horror. It's a cyclical nature of the horror genre, and I like it. So I'm happy we talked about it, John. This was cool.
He's done a lot. He's done so much cool stuff. I mean, we talked about Nightbreed. I'm a huge fan of Lord of Illusions. He just does neat stuff.
We're gonna do something. I've been in 1987 movies for a long time, so you and I are going to do a 1987 horror draft. And it's going to be very easy, John, because there's so many 1987 horror movies. You're going to have a blast with this. So I will give you first pick.
All right. So I am cheating, and I'm going to my John's Horror Corner index just to see the movies that I reviewed for 1987. And I'm not going to do the thing where I'm going to say that I'm not going to choose a certain movie, but I'm just not going to pick it first. So my first pick, gosh, what a year. I'm going to go with The Gate. How many are we doing? Are we doing 5?
Yeah. The Gate, I asked on MFF Facebook about what people's favorite 1987 movie was, and I got a bunch of Gates. So
I saw Jesse Deal hollering out about that. I gave him a love.
Yeah, I'm a Near Dark guy, so I'm gonna take Near Dark. That's my number one 1987 movie right there. Got to go Near Dark.
Near Dark. I'm gonna go Prince of Darkness.
Oh, hey, that movie we covered.
Yeah.
Right, Prince of Darkness. Okay, so now I'm up. This is tough. Okay, so I got Near Dark. I'm not gonna do that. There's a giant one sitting there.
I know. I was almost gonna say you could.
You can have it, and then I'll take whatever you don't, because there's two giant ones out there.
Maybe we'll both hold off on the gorilla. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, I don't think this is the biggest one ever, but I'm gonna take Nose 3. I don't think that's the one we're talking about.
No, that was the one I was talking about. I was talking about that.
Oh, do you want it? I'll take something else.
No, you take it.
Okay. Because there's still some huge hitters out there, John.
There's lots of good stuff floating around here. Okay. All right. I'm going to go a little unconventional here, I think. Oh, shit. But then there's those tentacles.
Yeah.
Oh, I need those tentacles. I'm going to take the Kindred.
The Kindred. Great.
Taking the Kindred for the tentacles.
I'm gonna do it anyway. I just love Jaws of Revenge. I'm taking it. I don't care. Okay. I love that there's a psychic link between the shark and Mrs. Brody.
But of course there is.
All right, what's your fourth pick?
All right, ready? I'm gonna take it because it's like I like joking in my review that it's like an unofficial Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. I'm gonna take Prom Night 2.
Prom Night 2. I love it. I'll take Monster Squad.
Michael Ironside. What's that?
I'll take Monster Squad.
Oh yeah, Monster.
And also our good friend of the pod, Short Round 2.0, he said that he would pick Monster Squad. He loves Monster Squad, so I got to give a shout out to him.
Right. Okay.
Oh, and while you're thinking, Robin Sparkle said The Gate, and then we have who else did? We had Lisa Leahy. So she went with the Monster Squad, classic American movies. Chris Kelly went with Hellraiser. Lisa Skiffen went with Evil Dead 2. James Foley went with Prince of Darkness. Andy Golding said Near Dark, because he loves the mixture of vampire films and westerns. And Jesse Yale said The Gate. And then you mentioned Nose 3.
I'm going to take Evil Dead 2. By the way, and I am doing that thing that I do all the time, where because today we're talking about Hellraiser, I just, for some reason, I can't find it in me to pick Hellraiser. So I'm doing Evil Dead 2 for my fifth.
Okay. I kind of want to pick Predator, but I'm not, because that just makes it uninteresting. You know what? But what's more popular? Okay. I mean, there's Lost Boys still out there, too. But I kind of want to go funky. I really want to go funky, John. Just give me a second here.
There's also Dolls.
Yeah, Dolls. There's so many good ones. Blood Diner.
Prison.
Wait, Prison? Rennie Harlan's Prison came out in 87?
Yeah, that's 87.
There it is. I'm good.
There's Stepfather.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the original Stepfather.
All right, John. Someone comes up to you and goes, John, you were picked to champion 5 movies from 1987 against all other horror years. Which 5 movies are you going to pick to champion 87? So you want to win. You got to.
What I'm going to do is my picks are the same, except I'm going to boot Prom Night 2 and I'm going to put in Hellraiser.
Oh, so you're going to do The Gate, Prince of Darkness, The Kindred, Hellraiser, and Evil Dead 2. So you wouldn't do Predator?
No, again, so I in no way deny that if someone picks that as a horror pick, but I just never think of that when I'm thinking of horror.
Got it.
That's all. So like that is the better movie, but when I'm I don't know why I compartmentalize that differently in my head.
Copy that. I mean, it's your pick, man. It's still a very good year.
I mean, and honestly, I think I put it in John's Horror Corner, although I'd say the same thing about it as I would Predator 2, but another 1987 movie that's brutal, RoboCop.
I mean, it's kind of a horror movie because it's so comically over the top, but then when does that come into line of like, not satire, but farce? But it's also so brutal.
I mean, like the visuals are more horrific than anything in Predator, for example. Right?
Yeah, that's
even
true.
though it's more about the violence, though, right, and not horror, if you will. But again,
I'm sorry.
but I wouldn't fault someone for picking it.
Because, like, The Night Comes for Us, that's a wildly violent movie, but you're like, is that a horror film?
See, I'd never say that, right?
Right.
Even though it's so violent. So violent.
Yeah, but then RoboCop is, but then it's all tough. But hey, man, listen, this was awesome, John, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for talking Hellraiser with me. This was a delight.
Dude, it's a pleasure. It is a pleasure. And if you get around to your Hellraiser 2, and by the way, off air I'll say that we talked about it. I'll say the same thing about Hellraiser 2 as I say Poltergeist 2. Over the top bonkers town. If you haven't seen it, I say let's do it.
Listen, I'm all about some over the top bonkers towny. So yeah, I mean, yeah, listen, John, we'll add it to the list. So we have, okay, so how about this? We have this.
Frailty's next, right?
Yeah, so we have Frailty, and then we have Backdraft, and then we have Red Scorpion, and then we can add the two sequels. I'd be down for that. Oh, we gotta do Deadstream first. Deadstream and then the sequels.
Yeah, we've been threatening that, and that I'm sorry I can't remember the director's name, but that deserves some more attention.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
The dude, and I love his VHS bit is one of my favorite VHS segments ever when they go to hell. So he and his wife are just this awesome creative team. So yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking him up now. So Joseph Winter.
Yep.
And what is the other director? Joseph Winter, and why can't I find this? And Joseph and Vanessa Winter.
Yeah.
That's it.
The awesome
and
creative
their VHS
team.
segment was To Hell and Back.
Yeah, and she's hilarious. I like that lady in there. She's hilarious. She's also in Deadstream, but oh man, what a skit. But hey, where can people find you, John, before we get out of here? Well,
you Google John's Horror Corner, you will find me all over the place, but all those places eventually lead back to the same Hell Priest origin on Movies, Films, and Flicks, where there's a little tab.
And then, just look under your floorboards. He might be there too.
I might be there too, in goo form.
All right, man. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers.
All right, so for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for John Levengood, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.